This presentation is for a service learning project assigned within my Capstone. I'm an emergency department registered nurse with almost 5 years experience and enrolled in the RN to BSN program. The service learning project I chose was community hours at the Food Bank of York County located on Princess Street. I chose this agency because the population is related to the population I see as a registered nurse in the emergency department. The population served is any family or single person in York County that qualifies. Qualification criteria include low income, those on disability, and those within the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. It can also include members of the community acutely affected by fire, tragedy, or at a sudden loss of job, like the most recent government shutdown. Additionally, any York County citizen can file for an emergency food bank voucher. This can provide up to 50 pounds of food. Senior citizens are eligible for not only their 50-pound food allotment, but also a free monthly senior box geared towards the needs of senior citizens. Addressing the issues of hunger, a social, political, economic, and cultural perspective. The social aspects of this service learning project spanned not only from the opportunity to serve this vulnerable population, but also the opportunity to work beside them. Many days while working in the food bank, groups of volunteers came in. Those with learning and cognitive disabilities were the largest population. Their school or daycares required them to meet a certain number of hours weekly that were defined as periods of socialization within their community. This meant oftentimes working with this population to not only assist them in tasks, but to speak with them and try to get them to open up as well as include them in planning and choosing tasks. I also found that when staff, volunteers, or patrons found out I was a nurse, they were surprised. I am assuming that this is because I am not the traditional volunteer found there. It was important to me to represent myself well as a person, of course, but also as a representative of my profession. Politically speaking, the food bank has been and is susceptible to being affected by the government. Although this is not something I could address, it is important to note. Most recently, the government shutdown has impacted the food bank. Firstly, the unpaid government workers are straining to make ends meet. Those that normally wouldn't need to are now frequenting the food bank. In addition, food stamps essentially stopped, adding new patrons to the food bank census as well. Finally, funding supplied by government grants is frozen and affecting attainment of foods and services. The following clip is a newscast by the York Daily Record filmed at the very food bank at which I volunteered. This was aired January 18th of this year.
Passed away, and they left me with no money or anything, so this is how I get my food for the month. And a lot of things have been cut for different people, and like even disability and such.
I came out because of the food stamp situation. It's hitting everybody hard. Everything's shut down. I have 4 grandkids, and the income's not there, so how do you feed the kids? That's my concern. It's the kids. It's extremely frustrating. I'm not going to lie. It's very frustrating. I actually received a text that said that I got some food stamps, which was half of what I usually get. I will get no food stamps in February, and they are not sure if I will get anything after February. Like, that's it. So, having custody of 3 of my grandkids. How do you feed them? I don't know. We're checking every food bank, everything to see where we can go each week to make sure the kids are fed.
It's just a nice assortment of things, and they make sure that they have fresh vegetables and dairy and stuff for the children, so I think that's a big thing. They try to do as much as they can for the community. I think that's huge.
It's easy to understand the role I played as far as economics were concerned. The population served was for a diversity of reasons unable to meet their food needs at home. We were literally handing out free food to those who just could not afford it. While each family got 50-pound food vouchers, there were also food for family events or pop-up markets every Tuesday and Friday. These food for family markets were operated when they had surplus, perishable, or donated items in addition to their 50-pound food allotment that were given out to the community. These times were some that I enjoyed most while working and learning at the food bank. Adult and children alike lit up when they were given fresh fruits, sugared cereals, gallons of milk, and snacks. Cultural aspects that I addressed included non-English speaking patrons. Thankfully, there was staff there that spoke fluent Spanish and was able to assist. Also, patrons of various ethnic backgrounds sometimes struggled with making their grocery shopping compatible with meals that they were used to cooking. On several occasions, I talked to them about food substitutes and printed out recipes. Project Fruition: The How and What of Service Learning. The design of the project was quite simple. As I stated before, I wanted the population to be similar to those I served in the ED. We serve every socioeconomic background, ethnicity, religion, and age. However, I was more interested in the vulnerable population, economically speaking. The food bank was suggested to me by a coworker who had done something similar in the next county over. I shared this service learning project with my husband, who was also finishing his RN to BSN program. We contacted the York County Food Bank and initiated an interview and orientation with Michael Fox, the Development and Communications Coordinator. Most days, the job was task-oriented. We stocked shelves, pulled food from the warehouse, checked for expiration dates, and helped shoppers. Helping shoppers was interesting and rewarding based on their personal nutritional needs or their search for treats for their children. A few times, I was placed in the office to do clerical work, and twice, for a very brief time frame, janitorial services. Revisions and considerations. What went well, what would I change? I think revisions for this project would be difficult. The volunteers they usually receive are there to serve community hours for a criminal offense or are part of a program for the cognitively impaired. Others are one-time visitors like high school organizations or office personnel from local donation programs. As nurses fulfilling requirements for college, we were the minority. We tried to engage staff and patron equally and without bias. Some days I felt they didn't really know what to make of us or do with us. I think it would have been beneficial to share our time equally performing daily tasks, but also assisting staff with community-based initiatives and outreach programs. I think if future RN to BSN students were to work within this program, it might serve them well to hold a donation to contribute to the food bank. I think this would greatly bridge the service, humanity, and purpose of this project. Student objectives. What was meant to be accomplished. By the end of the service project, the student will accomplish all of the following. Identify 3 of the risk factors associated with the need for food service support. Identify the community resources that can assist the agency, and assist in 3 differing pop-up market events in the community. All of the learning objectives were met. I do feel that if I had known more about what we would be doing, I would have tailored my objectives more toward action. However, it was also valuable to learn more about risk factors of patrons and community resources. The 3 risk factors I learned were acute life-changing events like fire, loss of home or job. Secondly, people that were new to the community and starting over. And lastly, those who had no jobs and no social support. The 3 community resources that can assist the agency are high schools and their organized student programs, for example, student councils and athletic groups. Another resource came from warehouse distributors who donated surplus foods. And lastly, the individual within the community. Individuals who patroned the food bank, volunteered at the food bank, or simply dedicated the energy to collect, organize, and donate large amounts of food. My last objective ended up being my favorite to participate in. During our pop-up markets, we gave out perishable items and sweet treats that were in addition to food vouchers. People would line up outside, and everyone was in a good mood and shared small talk about recipes, treats, and family backgrounds. This objective was easy to meet, as I could sign up ahead of time for hours that fell on the day of pop-up market distribution. Impact on the population. The impact of my service to community was both something I expected and something I did not even think would be a factor. I think most people live their daily lives on a fairly narrow path, meaning we only think about or interact with people within a certain boundary. I was surprised the first time I talked to someone with a full-time job come in for a voucher. He worked as a surveyor but was unpaid due to the government shutdown. Another patron with a part-time job just could not make ends meet. I also met a family who had come into America seeking asylum from Colombia, South America. The need that the food bank has for volunteers as well as donations is great. They were grateful for my hands, but also a few of the ideas I shared with them in collaboration for improvements. The community itself benefits directly from the food source, but also the social support and personal interaction. After weeks of spending time with staff, volunteers, and seeing the same patrons routinely, they became aware that I was a nurse. I didn't preemptively think that this would be a factor of impact, but I think the impact this had was quite profound in many ways. Some people don't trust healthcare or have limited access and may be weary for many reasons. I think that they saw me as a person first, and if that makes them less apprehensive, that means their needs will be met better when they do seek care. I am not able to separate how this project impacted me personally and professionally. So much of who I am is what makes me the nurse that I am, and being a nurse has contributed to my growth as a person. Having said that, I feel I benefited more from this program than I contributed. I feel I gave them my whole energy and attention while I was there, don't get me wrong, but what I have walked away with is a lesson in many things about this population and those who seek to help them. I feel as if I am one of those people who walks through life with boundaries. I interact with a certain socioeconomic group. I assumed there would be inner city patrons, but was surprised to see families that had children in classes with my children from our school district. I am in a vocation that serves all. The ED does not discriminate. While I treat all equally, no matter their background, race, religion, ethnicity, or financial state, I am serving them. While this project has been about service, it was more than that. I worked side by side with some of the people who were most in need, yet still found time to volunteer as well. I have been enlightened with a new perspective and understanding not only of the community in which I live, but even more so how to care for those in the ED. Thank you for your time and your interest.